Well, before we get into the rest of our program, we begin with a Cattleman to Cattleman news update. That's because a newly released study estimates that cattle industry losses as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic will reach nearly $14 billion. Now, the study was commissioned by NCBA and conducted by a team of industry-leading agricultural economists led by Oklahoma State University's Darrell Peel to help assist USDA in determining how best to allocate CARES Act relief funds to cattle producers. Now, the study shows cow-calf producers will see the largest impact, with COVID-19 related losses totaling an estimated $3.7 billion, or nearly $112 per head for each mature breeding animal in the U.S. Without offsetting relief payments, those losses could increase by over $135 per mature breeding animal, for an additional impact totaling $4.45 billion in the coming years. Meanwhile, stocker and backgrounder segment losses were estimated at nearly $160 per head, for a total economic impact of $2.5 billion this year, while feeding sector losses were estimated at $3 billion, or nearly $206 per head. I talked with the Colorado Cattlemen's Association's president, Steve Wooten, about the current challenges in the U.S. beef cattle industry because of COVID-19.
Well, it sure has changed some things for us, Russell. It added more uncertainty to our markets than we had beforehand, just because we don't know what the limit of the shelter in place and the social distancing is going to do for consumers that buy our product.
We've also seen several closures of meat processing facilities across the United States because of the coronavirus. And Steve talks about the impact these closures will have on the U.S. beef cattle industry.
In the short term, I think we can keep the supply chain working so the consumer can buy the product that they want. The longer it runs, then it becomes problematic to the consumer, and it really becomes problematic to our feeders that are struggling with markets as it is, but they're having to hold cattle for a week or 2 weeks. It's in the industry's best interest that we keep the closures to a minimum, that we pray for the health and safety of our workers, that everybody can stay healthy and stay at work that wants to and needs to, and get it back up and running as quickly as we can.
Now, the NCBA study concluded that the current situation is, of course, very fluid and uncertain, with additional damages likely. In the meantime, like Steve mentioned, let's continue to hope and pray that the ongoing COVID-19 crisis ends sooner rather than later. And now, here's more on the coronavirus situation and how the cattle industry is responding from NCBA CEO Colin Woodall in Denver.
First and foremost, we are doing everything we can to keep the supply of cattle and beef moving. It's extremely important right now to make sure that the consumers understand we don't have a beef shortage. We have to keep in mind that 50% of what we sell goes into food service. And without the food service business like we had before COVID-19, we have the ability to cover that consumer demand. The big issue for us as producers right now is the backup of live cattle trying to get into the packing plants to be harvested, and of course the ripple effect that has throughout the supply chain on the producer side, and that comes with a negative economic impact. So we are working with the packers, we are working with the White House, USDA, to ensure that we have everything in place to keep those plants up and running, and more importantly, to find ways to keep those plants that are closed, to get them reopened just as soon as we possibly can to harvest cattle again. And of course, with that, everybody continues to have a lot of concerns regarding the cattle markets. NCBA's Cattle Marketing Working Group continues their work. They started well before the COVID-19 crisis began, and they are working throughout the crisis to take all that we are seeing and try to find ways that we can improve ourselves as cattle marketers. We need to fix the cattle marketing system. That has become abundantly clear to us, and this group is doing everything they can to make it happen. We also are taking some time to focus on rural health care. We have contacted the White House and USDA, the Department of Health and Human Services, and encourage them to make sure that rural health systems get as much attention during this crisis as all of the hospitals in the big cities. And it's also important that we maintain vigilance on the mental health. Cattle production is stressful in good times. It's even more stressful in the bad times. And if you have some questions, be sure to reach out. There's a lot of people that want to help you, and you can go to our website and look at our Cattlemen's webinar series that actually talks about mental health. We're going to get through this together. It's not easy, but we are going to get through this together and make sure that we have an even stronger cattle business on the other side.